Again, we want to welcome you to the second annual Shop Small Saturday Authors Fair hosted by the Rochester Hills Public Library and Rochester Writers, held on Saturday and Sunday this year after Thanksgiving. I almost said Labor Day. I'm rushing the year. I think all of us want to be out of 2020. But we want to remind everyone we're being joined online today with Tiffany from the library.
Good,
hey,
how
Tiffany,
are you?
how are you? And of course, our author for this segment is Brenda Hasse, and we just heard her read a portion of her book. Tell us a little bit more about that and how that inspired you into the whole writing of the book, Brenda.
I was at a signing and I met an individual there. She came right up to me and just introduced herself, and we just hit it off. And she's just a magnificent person, very bubbly and energetic and just outgoing. And all of a sudden we just started talking, problems of the world. We all tried to, come up with our own solutions, or at least identify the problems. And we got on the topic of human trafficking, and she just started telling me how she was human trafficked. And I just thought the story was just an amazing story, and we kind of parted ways. And I thought about her for over a couple of months, I think. And I thought, oh, I got to track this lady down. It's gnawing at my head. So I tracked her down through Facebook, sent her a message, asked her to call me, and she did. And I said, hey, can I write your story? I think this is something that people need to be aware of, and what happened to you. And hopefully we can stop other people from being human trafficked as well.
And it's such a large problem that I think most people either don't know about or refuse to acknowledge. I think it's very difficult for people to wrap their heads around. And is that part of why you wrote it? And was it that difficult for yourself?
Well, I really think human trafficking is just one of the worst crimes ever. You're just taking advantage of somebody, and when they're the most vulnerable. And it's important to remember there are 3 different types of human trafficking. You've got the sexual prostitution human trafficking. You've got labor trafficking, which they work for a salary, but it's like next to nothing. Or you have the slave labor. So it's just not one type of human trafficking. There's 3 different types. As far as difficult to write, I was just amazed by her story and what she's gone through and how she survived and how she got out of it. And she's a very smart, intelligent person. I mean, she graduated with high school at 17, and she graduated with a 3.8 average. I mean, she pushed herself to get done quicker because she was expecting a baby and she wanted to get out of school quicker. So, but she was very easy to work with. I just would text her or call her anytime I wanted, because I wanted to get the story as accurately as possible. And oh yeah, she was very forthcoming, told me everything. And all of a sudden she, I'd work with her and she'd say, okay, now, oh, did I tell you I was an exotic dancer too? I'm like, what? She did whatever she had to do to survive. And she is just, she's just an amazing person. I loved working with her.
And this is not your first book. You're quite well published. Can you tell us a bit about how you got started into writing and how your journey has brought you to where you are now?
Well, I published my first book. It's a preteen historical mystery. It's about a dragon who cries diamond tears. And I wrote it and I published it, and it didn't meet my expectations. Let's put it that way. And then some gentleman, his name was Ed Kane, he saw that I was a published author, and he got a hold of me and he wanted me to write children's books. He made rocking horses. So I thought, okay, I can write children's books. And we found an illustrator. She's my graphic artist right now. And we worked together and published 3 books. And then I went back and I republished Wilkinshire, my first book, and submitted it for awards. I won 2 awards for it. And then after that, I just started writing with Nano. I'm actually doing Nano right now. And I think every novel that I've written with Nano, I've published. I'm on my, I don't know, seventh, eighth, maybe ninth book. I don't know. Novel and 3 children's picture books. So I keep working at it.
And when's the release of this new book?
A Victim of Desperation. I thought about releasing it in February. They always say, don't release during the holidays and with the election and COVID and everything else going on. I thought in February, but then I learned about somebody that could do a review for me, but they need, like Forward Magazine can do a review, free review for authors, but you have to give them a 4-month leeway time. So I may push it back until April.
Okay, so we can look forward to that book early next year.
Yes.
Great. Such a diversity of writing styles. What's your favorite?
Oh, I do like the historical romance, the young adult historical romance. I think that's definitely my favorite, but I do a lot of different genres. Obviously the children's books, the young adult historical romance. I have a medical visionary series. It's about life after death, what a person goes through once they passed on. And I'm one of those people that have, I can go into an antique store and hear disembodied voices and smell fragrances I shouldn't smell and get touched and things like that. Or I receive like dreams and visions. And so I took a lot of those things and I put them in a novel, and it ended up being a series about this woman who passes away and crosses over. And then whenever she's around her loved ones, she leaves a white feather, and it's about her, how her family continues on without her. So, and then obviously this one, A Victim of Desperation, I'm more of a contemporary, I guess. So I'm a little bit all over the place.
Well, the spooky tales tend to be quite popular this time of year, with us just passing through Halloween, and I think there's a lot of spooky tales in 2020 as we wind up the year. How does that reflect with writing something so personal as a nonfiction story of sex trafficking?
Well, I have to classify this really as fiction because I didn't live it. I mean, it's based on a true story, but there are parts I've had to actually make up because I wasn't there. But
Okay.
I think it's something that will resonate with a lot of people. I have a friend who actually is an FBI agent, and I've conferred with him on some of the things to make sure that I'm not giving away too much. But he's identified certain parts in our state that are hot spots, and it's sad to think that we have to deal with that.
So it's based on a true story, but it's still truth is very scary at times. So you kind of embrace the darker sides of life sometimes.
I don't think I'm like that really. I'm more of a positive, upbeat person. I'm not one to write paranormal romance, although I will admit the book I'm writing right now for novel has to deal with a person who's accused of being a witch. I mean, during the witch trials, there was a lot of innocent women that were, obviously killed because of silly superstitions or something like that. So I am exploring that a little bit in this next novel, and silly beliefs that people had, and the prejudices against the women. So and that's a work of fiction as well. It's a historical romance, but it's set more in the late 1700s, early 1800s.
So do you do a
So
lot of research for those projects then?
Oh,
What type
yes.
of research do you do?
I will buy, like right now I bought a whole bunch of books on witchcraft, and I've gone to Edinburgh, Scotland twice, and I love all the architecture and things like that. So I've kind of incorporated a lot of Edinburgh into it. There's actually a fountain that is dedicated to the women who were burned as witches in Edinburgh Castle. And then there's spots, where they were convicted, and it's just crazy what some of this stuff. I've learned about witch balls, with a lot of people don't know about those. They're actually blown ornaments that have like in the ornament, they have got pieces of glass going this way, and they're all different colors, and people would hang them in their windows to trap the spirits, kind of like, oh, what's those other thing, the dream catchers. They're kind of like that, only it was superstitious back then. So I have witch balls in there, and people hanging them all in the windows, and nag stones. Nag stones are stones that have a natural hole put in them. They're supposed to have like magical powers and keep you safe. And so it's a lot of these superstitions that I'm bringing to the forefront. I'm also talking about how they did body snatching, not necessarily grave robbing, but body snatching was very prevalent because the University of Edinburgh needed bodies for their medical department. So people would go snatch the bodies. And what I discovered is that they dig at where the head of the body would be, and they bust open the casket and pull out the body that way. They wouldn't really steal stuff from it. They just turned it in so they could get money from the university. So I actually learned about this young girl. Her name was Anna Stewart. And somehow she died. They didn't really say how she died. But she was buried. And the body snatchers went to dig her up within 24 hours. Of course, the fresher the body, the more money you get for it. So they dug her up within 24 hours. And when they got her out, they threw her body on the ground, and they were filling in the hole, and this woman sneezed. She was actually alive. So she was probably very poor, and she might have been cursed or something where they didn't give her a bell to ring. Because back then, a lot of these terms came into view as far as they had towers, and the person would watch the bodies at night to make sure no one stole them. He worked the graveyard shift. And then the people that had bells were dead ringers. And if you could ring and got saved, you were saved by the bell. So a lot of these expressions that we have now were back from when they stole body snatchers. The body snatching became prevalent because they quit killing, or when the prisoners died, they hung them, they quit hanging them. Those hanged prisoners used to go to the medical facility. But unfortunately, they stopped hanging prisoners. And what happened was, that's when body snatching became prevalent, and they passed an act in 1832 where people could donate their bodies, and that's when body snatching kind of went away.
That's pretty fascinating.
Wow.
Because you write so many different genres, do you sort of get into a zone for a particular genre? Like, this is my thing. I'm going to write about, the human trafficking, or I'm going to write about, the young adult novels, or does it all just sort of kind of happen at the same time, or do you just sort of have to dedicate yourself to one genre or another?
Well, I do know that, there are a lot of authors who write multiple books at a time. I usually just write one book at a time. It's easier for me that way. And I usually can produce a book maybe in 3 to 6 months if I really work at it. Nano really helps me a lot. It pushes me to get my 50,000 words in. And then from there, I can take my time editing.
And for those who might not know what you're talking about, the National Writing Contest every November, could you give a quick recap of that and how many times you participated?
I started participating in 2012. And National Novel Writing Month is free to join. You go to www.nanowrimo.org, and you can sign up. And as of November 1st, your challenge is to write 50,000 words in 30 days. So, and they have all kinds of little incentives. They have stickers, and they have little badges you can earn, and they have like a nice little line graph to follow along to make sure you're staying on target. And it's a good goal setting tool that you can use.
How many books have you produced from that writing series?
Well, all of my, 6 novels, I think, so far. 7, 8, it'll be 8.
That's wonderful. And you do that every year then. And so you'd be in the middle of something right now.
Yeah, well, yeah. Right now, I think my goal today is to reach 20,000 words. Wow. I know, I'm crazy.
Oh, that's all right. Tiffany, do you have any further questions for Brenda? She's such a faceted author.
Yeah. What started you being involved in writing? Does it go back to when you were a kid, or did it start sometime later?
Interesting you should ask, because when I was born, I had congenital heart defects. So I actually underwent open heart surgery when I was 3.5 and 5.5. I missed part of my kindergarten year. When I got to first grade, I really had a difficult time learning to read. I didn't understand how some kids could read so quickly, and I was just struggling along. I got very frustrated, and I kind of told myself, I really hate reading. I'm never doing this again, type of thing. And at that point, my parents moved me to a Catholic private school. And even though I had difficulty reading, I have a pretty good IQ. And it didn't take me long to figure out the way that the nuns set up the classroom is on one side of the classroom, you had the best readers in that row. And as you progressed across and went to the worst readers, and I was always in that last row, and it was me and like 4 other students. And the 5 of us were pulled out of the classroom several times a week to work on our reading skills. So I guess I kind of find it ironic that I now write for other people to read when I had such a hard time reading. As far as choosing a story, I almost think the story chooses me. Maybe that's why I write so many different genres. It's just all of a sudden that little bell goes off in my head and it's like, okay, I got to write this story. And then it just kind of flows. I don't know.
Well, Brenda, I think we're going to leave it with that. Is there a place that you want to send viewers today where they can find out more about you, to buy your books and see where to find you on social media?
Sure. I think, well, I'm on Facebook. I just went on MeWe. I know everyone's kind of exiting Facebook real fast. So I set up an account on MeWe back in May of last year. So they can find me on there too. I do have a website. It's www.brendahassebooks.com. My last name is spelled Hasse. I know that's the tough one. So yeah, you stop by. I do have the cover mock-up for a victim of desperation if they would like to take a peek at it, and take a look at all the rest of my books.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us today and being one of the selected authors for our second annual Shop Small Author Fair here in 2020. And we'll have another author in a moment.
Great. Thanks for having me.